Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's September 12th, 2019, and we're underway at 7 p.m. For those of you that came in late, if you have a cell phone or something, if you would turn it to off silent or vibrate, we'd certainly appreciate it. Okay, we're going to start off our agenda tonight with our invocation, and tonight Councilmember Massey will do us the honor there, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and Texas flag. So if you would please stand for the invocation and pledges.
Dear Lord, we are grateful for your blessings. We ask that you watch over our city staff and fire and police forces. Keep them safe from harm and productive in their work. As we deliberate during our meeting, give us wisdom to make the right decisions for our city, the citizens we represent, and our municipal employees. Guide us and help us to be courteous and considerate with one another. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, next up we have some public hearings. And I will read each one of these as we go through them. We do have some speakers for this, and they appear to all be on the same item, so when we get there, we'll hear from y'all. Okay, and our public hearings tonight are items 2 through 5. And we will open item number 2, public hearing at 7:02. And this public hearing is to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on proposed City of Helotes fiscal year ending 2020 budgets, including but not limited to the general or maintenance and operations fund, debt service or interest in sinking fund, capital replacement fund, municipal court security and technology funds, police department training and education fund, school safety fund, PEG or public access channel fund, police department state forfeiture fund, street maintenance fund, and hotel occupancy tax, otherwise known as hot tax, fund budgets. And no one signed up to speak in this public hearing, so we will close it at 7:03. We will open the next one, item number 3, at 7:03. This public hearing is to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on the adoption of the proposed tax year 2019 ad valorem or property tax rate. And no one signed up to speak on this public hearing, so we will close it also at 7:03. But we're squeezing a lot into 1 minute here. We're going to open the next one, public hearing number 4 at 7:03. This public hearing is to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a resolution of the City Council of the City of Helotes, Texas, approving appropriations for the City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation's fiscal year ending 2020 maintenance and operating, interest in sinking, and capital budgets beginning October 1, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020 to support the EDC's programs, projects as defined by Texas Local Government Code Chapter 505, Type B corporations and cooperatives, authorizing the city administrator and EDC executive director to take all necessary steps to implement the provisions of this resolution, incorporating recitals, providing for severability, and adopting an effective date. And again, no one signed up for this particular hearing, so we will close it at 7:04. Next, we have item number 5. We're open at 7:04. And this public hearing is to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a request by Kidder Entertainment Group of SA LLC for a specific city council-approved use permit for a tavern with outdoor area for patrons with no live or recorded music allowed outside on property zoned Overlay District B3, OD for Overlay District, and located on a 5.474 acre lot described as Lot 7, Block 2, within the Bandera Oaks subdivision, generally located behind 12512 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas, 78023. And for more clarity, that's actually going to be located, if approved by council, behind the Helotes Point Retail Center, which is where Bandera Road Cafe and Navy Federal Credit Union located. And we do have some folks that signed up to speak to this. If you would, we have a timer. You have 3 minutes to speak to the council. And if you would, when I call your name, come up to the podium, state your name and address, and then that's when the time will start. So first up, we have Carly Barrows. Welcome. Hi.
Hi, I'm Carly Barrows. I live at 9418 Gray Sage, which is right there on the map. This place that they're going to build is essentially right in my backyard, right across the fence. I have a young daughter who's 2, and I don't necessarily want bar noise in our backyard when we're putting her to bed or waking her up at night. And I know it says there's no live music, but I know we've probably all been to a bar like this, and things can get rowdy outside, and there's going to be a big parking lot. It just makes families like me, and I know my neighbor as well, very nervous about raising our kids there, and also our property values are going to kind of tank when we want to sell our house one day because there's going to be a bar in our backyard. So that's all I have to say. We're not happy about it, but understand y'all need to do what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Eric Negron. Come on up, Eric, and again, state your name and address and tell us what you want to say.
My name is Eric Negron. I live at 9427 Camino Venado. I heard about this recently. I'm not aware of all of the issues involved. I'm sure due diligence has been paid. I'm still worried about the business. They're selling alcohol and music, and I don't think they have any other products that they're generating. The business hours, the peak business hours, 10 o'clock at night to 2 in the morning is what I've been told most places like this. In that area that you showed the map on, I don't see many businesses open at that time. Is it the best location in town? I don't know. I would have approved, if you look at 1604, there's businesses going up everywhere on 1604. Bandera is the same way. I'm sure you have commercial zones. Walmart in that area exploded. The other side of Bandera is even better than our side of Bandera, as long as it's away from the neighborhood that's across the street from us. I'm worried about the issue. Tavern is a tavern, but I'm also concerned it might be a nightclub, and there's a big difference between a small tavern and a large nightclub. And I don't know much about that. I just want to raise that issue, okay? If it's a bar or a lodge, that's fine. If it's a nightclub, then the location is out in my mind, it's not reasonable in my mind. Is there better opportunities elsewhere? I'd like something like a daycare center or one of these Anne Frank academies that's moving up and down Bandera Road. Maybe there's better opportunity. When I moved to this city in 1997, there's been a lot of development. The city has traded lands with San Antonio. Maybe I propose an exchange of city land in a commercial area or near a commercial area for a land in this business development. I'm not saying he can't move in because I don't know all the particulars, but I'm just saying maybe there's just a better solution. Is this location for him? You know, it'll benefit him to find the best location for his business. Or is this just the first one? Did he just happen to buy the property and now we're using special permits to insure the property and it changes? Really, it's not a BC3 overlay unless you go back to the Helotes code and you put in there, you know, taverns and bars, because what I read says not permitted. I didn't read permitted. So I'm just going to close there. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
And last, we have Monica Negron. Monica, welcome.
My name is Monica Negron, and I reside at 9427 Camino Venado, Cedar Springs, Helotes, Texas. I also oppose this tavern or nightclub or bar, whatever it's called, to be open and built there on this property. I live towards the front of the subdivision. I did not receive a letter, so I'm not sure exactly what the law says for the state of Texas that is followed, that this letter was sent to certain residents. However, my concern is several. One of them is also diminished property values. My husband and I have lived here for over 20 years. We've seen a lot of growth in the city of Helotes. We have interest to want to continue to live here. However, if things start to really continue to go down the drain and this type of business is allowed very close to our subdivision, we're really going to highly consider leaving Helotes. And I hate to say that because I have, you know, a love for the area. One of my concerns, not just the property values being diminished, but the drainage. There's a lot of construction going on to widen the drainage along 1560 Bandera Road, and I've seen it through the years. However, what about the drainage that leads into our neighborhood? We are on the first street, or the second street as you go into Cedar Trail, and the drainage goes, the easement is right behind our property. And I'm concerned that, you know, we're at kind of a direct parallel line to where this is going to be built. I don't know exactly how the runoff is going to go because I'm not an engineer to know that, but I'm really concerned about the drainage, that it's being accounted for out on the main street, but what about the neighborhood? Okay, how is that going to change for us? The other, security. Just like the other two speakers have mentioned, this bar is going to have late hours. I don't know if it's going to be a nightclub or not, where it's going to have live music inside but not outside. If they might have a patio, the doors might be wide open to where the inside music can be listened to and heard out in the patio. To me, that's like having outdoor music. Having something outside, even if there is a patio, it's going to be loud. Late hours into the night. There's a security concern where things might get out of hand, and there might be, let's say, a lot of motorcycles that gather there, noise pollution, people and drunkards that might happen, and for that reason, I think it just brings a different kind of crowd that's not welcome close to a neighborhood, especially with children around there. I don't understand how something like this could be built this close to a neighborhood where just on the other side is a fence line with homes that back up into that property. I thought maybe that the zoning would not require to be built. I don't know if special considerations were given. I wasn't here last week for that meeting. But, you know, and everything that I've read in doing some research, it just really sounds kind of unusual that if this is allowed to go through, that being built close to a neighborhood just right behind it doesn't seem right. The other concern that I have overall is if the property values, going back to that, if they are diminished, I'm really worried I'm not going to be able to sell my home. And basically, that's it. Those are my concerns right there. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming out and letting the council know how you feel. Okay, that ends our public hearing, and it's 7:14. That's when we'll close it. Next on the agenda is item number 6, open session or citizens to be heard. We didn't have anyone sign up. Okay, no citizens signed up to speak to council, so we'll go on to the consent agenda. And a consent agenda in our type of meeting is just a grouping together of items that the staff and I feel are fairly routine city business. And the intention is for council to approve all of the items with one motion and one second. Tonight, it's items 7 through 10. And we do give them the opportunity to ask a question. If we can answer the question fairly briefly, we will. Otherwise, they can request to pull an item and have it moved down into the section of the agenda for individual items for full discussion. So that being said, I would ask, are there any questions about items 7 through 10 or any request to pull an item? None? Then I would ask for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 7 through 10.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve consent agenda items 7 through 10.
We have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Fredericks. So we have a motion from Meadows, a second from Fredericks to approve consent agenda items 7 through 10. No discussion being required. We'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Consent agenda items 7 through 10 are approved unanimously. That takes us to item number 11, and this is discussion of and action on a request by Kidder Entertainment Group of SA, LLC, for a specific city council-approved use permit for a tavern with outdoor area for patrons, no live or recorded music allowed outside on property zoned overlay district B3 OD. So if I can have a motion and a second to discuss and take action on this.
Mayor, make a motion we discuss, take action on 11.
We have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Fredericks. Bert, it's your motion, so you're up first.
Can I ask questions of the proposed buyer of the property?
Sure, if you would, come on up to the podium and state your name, address, and who you represent. And then, yeah, sure. And then be available for council to ask you some questions. And again, keep in mind that this agenda item is for zoning only and whether or not to allow this business on this particular parcel. We'll go ahead.
Okay. Let me give you this first.
Give it to the city secretary so she can log it in.
Where we plan to put the building.
That's what I was going to ask you, where the building was exactly going to be. I know it
That's
was,
why
it was
I-
mentioned at P and Z.
I got the site plan and I blew up the location to show how far it is from the residential area. I think it's almost 400 feet.
Okay. I'll take a look when it comes over. Mr. Kidder, I was going to ask you, do you have security in the parking lot, since this is going to be, since your business would be open till 2 o'clock in the morning?
Absolutely.
Do you provide security in the parking lot?
Absolutely. We have security inside and outside.
Okay. And you will have, this is just the building that you're showing here?
That's the proposed building.
Okay.
The
And
reason
then-
I show 12,000 square foot, I think there was some misunderstanding when I showed the layout before. We have to do at least 5% of the square footage that's being purchased, which turns out to be about 12,000 square foot. We're only going to build about 8,000 square foot of the tavern. It's not a nightclub. We don't use the word nightclub in our business at all. And the other 4,000 square foot will be a retail use.
Okay. And then what about, are you taking any provisions for the sound at all?
Absolutely. We are, I went to a meeting today to show the type of insulation that we're going to have. It's a new company out of Canada and Mexico that actually builds everything from the ground floor. Everything is new construction that has more insulation than the normal construction.
Okay.
Actually, it holds up to hurricane type winds.
Okay, and one of the people that spoke at the public hearing said something about leaving patio doors open for the
Right.
for the patrons on the patio.
In this situation, you can see where our building and our patio is facing Bandera. It's facing away from the residential area.
Okay, but you would be doing that
No, our doors are closed. We don't have any music outside at all.
You're not gonna have any piped-in music to the patio area at all?
No.
Okay. And I know this is not part of what we're discussing right now, but you are behind the Bandera Point
Right.
deal. As far as signage goes, it's gonna be hard to get your sign to be shown on Bandera Road, just for your information. I know that's not part of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
But that's something that will go through the process whenever you get to it. Okay. Right now, I am torn. I think this could be done, but I'd like to hear what the rest of the council has to say about it. That's all I have for now.
Paul, you're second.
May I see the
Yeah.
schematic?
Can I also answer another question from last Tuesday? I think there's a misconception of entertainment on Bandera Road, and I think it comes from Flores Country Store. Flores Country Store will hold their occupancies around 3,000 people. Ours is only about 300 or 400. So there's a huge difference between Flores Country Store that has live entertainment outside and us. We have live bands that are inside that they won't be able to hear, and we plan to build and landscape trees. I'll show you some pictures of them that are at least 30 to 40 feet in height.
Again, give it to the city secretary.
Thank you. Just add privacy and
And so, and I know currently, at your current location, in the evenings, the doors are open.
the patio.
You will not open the doors to the patio
Only
at
time
all?
our doors open is when people come in and out. You know,
So there won't
we
be,
can't leave them open all the time.
okay.
There's the, I think there's
Yeah, you have the indoor-outdoor bar, like
Well, yeah,
the
that's a
indoor-outdoor.
garage
The
door.
garage door that can come up or go down.
Okay, but
that-
that doesn't,
But
okay.
it comes down on top of the existing
Right.
bar area.
Right.
Okay.
But it does have the option to go up too.
And I know y'all barbecue or
Right.
some pits out there, y'all barbecue every once in a while?
We do benefits every Sunday for different people in need.
And this patio will hold 100 or so people?
Probably around 100 people.
So easily you could put 50 to 75 people out on the patio.
Probably. And see, and when we talk about doing this, we're talking about maybe 3 nights a week. Our Wednesday night, our Friday night, and our Saturday night are nights where we have the most crowds. The rest of the time, it's pretty dead. So I think there was a question asked to me about, you know, at 2 o'clock, does everybody leave at one time and we're going to have a string of cars running down Bandera Road? That's not the case. People will get there sometimes at 7, leave at 8, 9, 10. They leave whenever they choose, and they're not young kids. Our average age is probably in the mid-30s. So they act accordingly. And we've been doing this just in Helotes since 2011.
I mean, I looked at the lot, and there is quite a bit of vegetation towards the back. But looking at the lot over to the right, there's not a lot of vegetation.
Right.
So I think if you're in the Cedar Springs, if you're looking at the lot to the right, you might be okay, because again, I think there's a lot of vegetation that way, especially when you look at where you're going to put the building. But to the left, there's not a lot of vegetation.
Well,
And I think
that's
there-
where
the-
we
the-
would, that's
the
where we
sound-
would bring in the picture I showed you of vegetation throughout the entire building.
And the concern I have is, if I was living in Cedar Springs, I mean, I don't know, it's not zoned, and so we have to give a special permit. I'm a little skeptical because of 100 people out on the patio drinking can get loud. People going out to their cars at the end of the night can get a little noisy. And that's in a lot of people's backyard, close to people's backyard. So that's
Well, it's
the
about-
major
yeah.
concern that I would have, and certainly some citizens have showed up to speak to that. But I don't know if I lived back there, I would be a little hesitant if I lived back there. I don't.
I
But I
think
would be a
where
little
we're at right
hesitant.
now is even up to a subdivision. There's a subdivision right there to the left of us. You know, we've had to deal with this before to where, you know, there's a neighborhood right there. And it might even be closer than this one. So, I mean, I understand concerns. I mean, you know, we're both parents. We have 3 daughters. Just to give you a little idea about us, we've been married 27 years. We have, our oldest is a sophomore at A&M. She's an engineering student. Our second one goes to O'Connor. She's a sophomore. And our little one's a 6th grader. So, I mean, we understand concerns. We're parents too, you know, and we try to run a business that we would be proud of too. You know, we take pride in it. You know, I know there's things about, you know, drunkards leaving, and you could leave drunk from El Chaparral, you could leave drunk from Floors, you could leave, you know, I mean, that's a choice, you know, and we try to do our best. All of our bartenders are certified, of course, and, you know, look out for things like that. So we understand, you know, people's concerns, but we also don't consider ourselves to be lousy bar owners. You know, we take pride in it and what we do.
Yeah,
And-
I think a question was asked also about how do we deal with people that we believe that are intoxicated? Well, we take care of anyone that walks out that door. If we see that they're intoxicated, we'll pay Uber to take them home, keep their keys, and they'll come back the following day and pick it up. So that's something we've done for, you know, almost 9 years.
That's all for now.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Jim?
A couple of questions, if I could have the site plan back.
Can I say one more thing also about the patio? That's why we put the patio in the front, because you have this big building, the people aren't in the back, you know, hanging out on the patio. It's in the front of the business, which faces toward where the highway is anyways, where, you know, traffic is anyways.
Thank you. The application asks for a special use permit, basically that would not allow outside music. At P and Z, you all discussed the fact that you'd had a couple of charity events that did require a special permit. By the way, I would applaud you, the fact that I understand you raised $170,000 from one of those events. I think that's fantastic for the purpose it was served. But are you saying with your permit here that you would not make application for special use permits for music outside, or that it would just be on a rare occasion?
No, we know going into the location that we will not have any outdoor entertainment.
Okay, that's a fair answer. My second question had to do with, there were concerns at P and Z about traffic. Do you have any plans for having someone, public safety or someone out there directing traffic at high traffic times, or because that is going to be a choke point?
There's really not a high traffic time, like I was saying before. Most people won't stay till 2 o'clock. If they do, it's probably 7 or 8 cars at one time leaving. But, you know, it's not like Floors where they have somebody playing outside and everybody wants to leave at the same time and there's 100 cars backed up.
So you have no plans for public safety to be out there directing
Oh,
traffic?
absolutely, we will. We'll do whatever it takes to make everything work.
That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, Cynthia?
I just think that it is good for us to kind of review what we're supposed to be looking at when we make these kind of decisions, besides, you know, the applicant and the reasonableness of what you're talking about. The uses, again, this is a use permitted only by city council approval, and there's a reason for that. The uses are pursuant to the method, we're supposed to look at the methodology that's in Chapter 98, Article 5. And this is what we're supposed to be considering to override the overlay district. The purpose of the overlay district is to create a more attractive, cohesive, and safe environment, to safeguard the city's heritage by preventing the spoliation of areas that reflect important elements of the city's cultural, natural, historic, and economic fabric, to create a favorable impression of Helotes that provide environmental enrichment for the citizens of the city and visitors, and to preserve, protect, and enhance nearby residential areas, and to reduce visual chaos and limit distractions along public roadways, and to stabilize and strengthen property values within the corridor. So those are the issues that we need to decide if this business is going to be doing that or not. Those are the issues that we have to make our decision on, not whether we like you and think you're great people and we like going to Cooter Brown's, or we would go to this tavern. We have to look at those issues, and we have to answer those questions. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay. Alex?
Were you finished?
I'm finished now.
You finished? Yeah.
Thank you. I applaud Councilmember Massey for bringing it up. As a member of the citizens who met with Mayor Hodges 19 years ago, that created the end result of the overlay district, I think that I'm aware of why what was a B3 zoning was changed to B3 overlay district. And to me, I think that's exactly what we're looking at here, not to judge whether you are or aren't wonderful people, whether your intentions of the potential impact to the neighbor are there. My bigger concern is the unintended consequences associated with it. I have here something that came up when that property was originally rezoned a few months ago by Planning and Zoning and Council, and this talks about the tree preservation. And I find it hard to believe that you'll be able to get 400 parking spaces in the backside behind the building. I know we've talked a lot about the sound and the patio and all of that, but there's still going to be a 400 or 350 to 400 space, that I believe is what you quoted, parking lot behind the building, and that's going to clear trees out. There's no question about that. What sound might be muffled by a little bit of landscaping is not going to actually be muffled anymore once you end up with 400 parking spaces of concrete or asphalt or something of that nature. I can attest to that personally because my house backs up to the mini storage, which is 2 lots further over. So I'm not within the area that's immediately behind where you're planning to put it, but I'm close enough to know that when they built the wash tub, every afternoon when I'm in my house, I can hear when the wash tub, when a car doesn't come out right. I can hear this PA system on that, and I can hear that. I can see the lights in my house at night, and I know that a 400-place parking space, empty or full, is going to have street lights. Yes, there are codes about what needs to be or doesn't need to be off premises, but it will clearly be a lot different than another type of business that is not going to require 400 parking spaces in that fashion. The other parking spaces for the other buildings which are already on that property don't have anywhere near that volume of it. So I think that while I applaud your attempt to make it to work, I just don't know that this is the right location for some of the things, not because of what you intend or don't intend, but what might be the unintended consequences of that type of establishment that close to a residential neighborhood. Thank you, Mayor.
Bert, yeah, any follow-up?
I'm going to ask a couple more questions about it. Are you buying are you going to purchase the whole property?
Yes, we are.
The whole property, okay. And what time do the bands stop?
Bands usually stop about 11:30.
11:30?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had.
Paul?
So y'all do have live bands inside?
Inside.
Okay. But nothing is piped out to the patio
Nothing.
at all? Just patrons out there?
Right.
Go out for fresh air? And then there's a bar on the outside? In the
Well, there's-
patio area? There'll be a bar out on the patio area?
What there is a garage door that opens up, and there's a bar that's up against a wall. That there, when you go inside, you can be served inside or outside.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Jim, any follow-up?
I think you've clarified that already, but the 12,000 square foot includes 8,000 square foot for your establishment and 4,000 square foot of retail.
Right.
And your plan right now is to maintain ownership of that retail?
Right, correct.
That's it? Cynthia?
I'm looking at the purposes of the overlay district. There's too many answers for me that are no. And so I'm not going to be able to approve this.
Anything else?
No.
Alex, any follow-up?
No, sir.
Okay, that's your 2 rounds. Anybody have any final comments? Thank you very much. Okay, no further discussion or questions. We'll call the question. And on this, a yes vote will be to approve the specific city council approved use permit, and a no vote will be to deny it. So keeping that in mind, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no.
No. No.
Okay. We have a no vote unanimously, so your request is denied. Okay, that takes us on to number 12. And this is discussion of an action on a proposal to add a spray park or splash pad project for the Helotes Fitness Park and Disc Golf Course to be completed jointly with the Helotes Economic Development Corporation. And I would look for a motion and a second then to discuss and take action on this item.
Mayor, I make a motion to discuss and take action on 12.
Have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We got you. Let Jim have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gee, thanks.
So we have a second from Meadows. So Bert, it's your motion. You're up first.
First, I'd like to commend the mayor on coming up with this idea. I think it's a really, really good idea for that park. I also like the area that you proposed to put it in, next to the, close to the new restroom facility. I guess we will be, I mean, it's got to go to EDC for funding, is that correct?
Yes.
And without EDC approving it, we're not going to do it anyway then, right?
Well, no, I have a stipulation in there that this will also qualify for the 2015 C of O money, Certificates of Obligation money. So if the EDC decides not to help us by funding it, then we can go ahead and use the 2015 Certificate of Obligation money. We have
Okay,
quite a bit of money there.
And then there's a lot of examples of what might go in there. That's what this is. It's just a bunch of different things that could go in there.
Yes.
It's not going to be a huge park.
No,
Okay.
we're figuring probably 12 to 1,500 square feet with an
Oh, okay.
option to expand it. That's a nice size for this size park and the parking that we have available. As I explained, that we have plenty of room for an auxiliary parking lot to allow an extra anywhere 30, 40, 50 cars. And we can now handle between 25 and 30 cars with the facility the way it is now at the disc golf course. And I've talked to 3 providers. There are others that we'll be talking to. Generally, they're all buy board members, so it'll be like a design build. We'll find the people that we think will do the best job and then proceed with the design and go from there.
Okay. And then it will probably, this is probably a dumb question, but it'll probably be only open in the summertime. Is that correct?
Typically,
Yeah.
yeah, probably from April or May
And
to
is
about this time.
Is the water recycled?
That's the option that we're looking at.
Okay.
Because it's the most expensive. You can, what they call recapture, or capture the runoff and use it for irrigation purposes or something like that, or you can just let it spill onto the ground off of the pad. But we've looked at those two as being something that we wouldn't want, and we'll just recycle. It's more economical, it's more environmentally friendly.
Now, would we have to have anybody there monitoring the water park at all?
No, there's no standing water, therefore there are no lifeguards. The only thing that we'll have is a certified person, which will probably get one of our Public Works employees certified to handle this kind of equipment and keep it running. It's very low maintenance, and the water can be timed to come on at a certain hour and off at a certain hour. That doesn't mean it runs all the time. Each particular feature on there will have an activation button, so the user can push that button, and we can regulate the time anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, all the way up to 4 minutes for them to use that particular feature.
And is our water supply to that area good enough for this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. Good, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, Jim?
Just a couple of quick comments. One, I think the one thing to pay attention to especially is the quality of the water and making sure that's tested. I'm sure there are standards for splash parks, just like there are for pools, but that's one area where you can get into trouble very easily. I'm very supportive of the concept. I think the idea is great. Your idea of the timing things, they also have them just, they're motion sensitive rather than hitting a button where if there's a child in there, it would actually activate versus just having it just on a timer. My last comment, I think given the fact that you've brought this forward, I can foresee a dedication with a pair of Hawaiian shorts and the mayor standing up to give the dedication. So I think that might be in order when this thing approves.
I'll make a note of that. And as far as the water clarity, there are filters involved in the recirculating system and a chlorinator. So it's all filtered and chlorinated before it's returned back out for use. Okay, Paul, anything?
Looking, it looks like the road that will come in is up there in that'd be the northwest corner. And I guess it's gonna have to cross the track? I guess that's not the most opportune thing, but I assume there'll be some kind of safety thing.
There'll be signage there and you know, low speed limit, but that's fairly common in a lot of parks.
What about any kind of shade structure around the splash pad for?
Yeah, there'll be amenities. We'll either do pavilions, much like we have now, the 4 pavilions that have been Eagle Scout projects, or we'll have something else, but there'll be some tables and canopies right around the splash area for parents to sit while the kids are there. But from what we're hearing, the parents get out there with the kids and have fun.
The only other thing I can recommend is maybe some playground equipment around there. I know when I'm up there walking around, there's a lot of kids while the parents are walking, and they get a little bored with not much to do, and that would be a nice addition if that was feasible. So
Yeah,
that's the only other suggestion I can
That's
make.
in the long-range plan. The only reason we haven't done something already is each thing we do, we try and see what kind of usage we get out of it. And since we have the playground here at City Hall, we haven't really worried about it too much over there. But with this feature, I believe I even put that in there, that playground equipment and shade structures would be part of the amenities we'd probably be adding.
Okay. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Cynthia?
Yeah, you answered all the questions, and I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur. I think it's a phenomenal idea, and I know there have been some suggestions. You've probably thought a lot of these. I would think that one that might work really well would maybe a little low fencing right around the immediate area. If for no other reason, I know some of our citizens take dogs out there, and I don't know if they might get loose, but they might have a tendency to want to run out there. And especially if you're going to have this kind of splash area with the smallest kids, you want to make sure that they're contained and the parents don't have to go running off in other areas. I also don't know if we need to beef up maybe the side fencing. I know it's a pretty good fence, but just to kind of watch that, again, for security of the small kids, if we're going to anticipate a large amount of smaller kids. The only thing that I would say is that provision that you mentioned, I was going to actually ask about it, and that is in the event that the EDC chooses not to pay for it, that the city would. And given the fact that it's $250,000, I would like to see it maybe come back to council for final approval if EDC decides not to before we commit to the funds. That's my only thought.
Okay. And as far as the fencing, we did look at that, and probably will have a 4-foot fence around it. We are getting ready. In fact, we're putting the bid package together to put a better fence around the whole perimeter of the park, similar to what we have out front of City Hall here.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Bert, any follow-up? Paul?
No, sir.
Anybody else? No follow-up? Okay, then we'll call the question. All in favor of proceeding with the
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do I need to make an amendment to include what Councilmember Blue said about if the EDC doesn't approve it?
Yeah, sure, you can go do that.
I'd like to put that in the
Okay,
minute version.
sure.
Okay.
So, Councilmember Buys is amending it to say if it exceeds the,
If EDC does not approve.
oh, if the
the
EDC
funding.
does not approve it, then it'll come back, and we can certainly do that. Jim, you okay with that amendment?
I'm fine with that.
That'll be your second, okay. All in favor of this item, including the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. I appreciate it. That takes us to item 13. This is discussion of an action on a proposal to install new sidewalks along the east side of Riggs Road from Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church to FM 1560, and along the west side of Old FM 1560 from FM 1560 to City Hall, to be completed jointly with the Helotes Economic Development Corporation to provide the funding. So again, if I can have a motion and a second to discuss and take action.
Mayor, I make a motion to discuss and take action on 13?
We have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
Second.
See, you missed out. You're looking over there. You could have beat Paul. Okay, we have a second by Fredericks. And again, as I said in the agenda item, we realize we've put in a grant request for Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Funding grant, which includes this section of sidewalk. However, the ask that we have on that grant request is pretty high compared to the total funds available. So although we remain optimistic, we might receive some of it, we may not receive all of it. And this is going to be a contingency, since as I explained here, a priority that I've had is getting a safe route from Old Town, ultimately with 1560 being widened to the park and to City Hall for pedestrians. And so that's the reason this would be a contingency. We would wait until we see how the grant funding goes before we would start this, but we want to go ahead and kind of get preliminary approval and get some of the preliminary work done on it in preparation for proceeding probably first quarter of next year, which is well after the grant funding. So that being said, Bert, it's your motion, so you're first up.
Okay, I'm a little confused. So the grant funding when is that going to be determined?
December something, right?
Of this year?
Yes,
And you wanted to start the project next year?
Yes.
Early next year?
yes,
So we'll find out whether or not,
yes.
okay? And then we're going to try to use EDC funds for this?
Yes.
So I'm for this, and just like it was the last one, it's a good idea. But I think Councilmember Blue's probably going to say is if the EDC doesn't approve it, I would like it to come back to us for final approval.
Final approval for what?
For the funding,
For the funding?
yeah.
Depending upon the cost? Okay. 'Cause,
I'd like to see if everybody else thinks the same way, but that's what I think we need to do, just like we did on the last one.
okay. Paul?
No, I'm all for it. I think it would be a nice addition to Riggs Road and the elementary school down there. And then I know over here, a lot of the exercisers run up and down
Yeah.
towards Municipal Way. So I think that would add some safety to those two areas. So I'm all for it.
Jim?
I'm for it. I think the safety aspects would override anything else, but I think the funding will be key to making it work, so we'll wait and see what happens.
Cynthia?
The only thing that kind of bothered me when I was reading this was that it's going to be on the east side up to 1560, and then it's going to go over to the west side. So it's not really a contiguous kind of, it's not like just across the street. So, there's going to be a walkway across, and then that's a very dangerous area for someone to walk across the street. That's that curb that
Well,
and I'm thinking that I know that I read all the background information. Having it on the west side, which is closer to Helotes Creek, the creek is far enough away where you could put the sidewalk there. So I'm not understanding why we don't want to do that. I think it's a better for the safety of people, to have it on the west side.
Yeah, I considered that and walked that, most of the length of it, and the creek is really right there. There's a pretty good drop-off, so as I mentioned in here, if we do it on the west side, there's gonna be quite a bit of handrail or guardrail that'll be required for safety, so people won't step off and go there. So the idea that I had in this proposal, of course, it's subject to change, is that crosswalk to take people again from the east to west, and there is a sidewalk on the east side that connects to 1560 and goes on up to Bandera Road, but it would be set back from that intersection, a safe distance to where there'd be a crosswalk there. There'd be a sidewalk segment then on the west side where they could go ahead down to 1560. It wouldn't be right there at the intersection. That was my thinking.
So no one's going to be actually crossing the street on the east side from,
They basically cross, if they're on the west side coming from Our Lady of Guadalupe, they'd have a crosswalk there, go down the east side, then come back across if they're going down 1560.
yeah, but I'm talking about the crazy person who's going to cross the street.
Well, you can't stop that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're out there now. And-
Well, the
and
reason, because there's
There's probably one out there right now crossing somewhere.
yeah, you're right. Well, there's no, but see, having a sidewalk, it precludes that people are going to be walking, and we're going to be encouraging people to walk. So they're going to end up there at that corner, and they're going to either, go to the right to go 1560 that way, or they're going to maybe want to across the street. And are we going to have a walkway across the street? I mean, like lines, the crosswalk
Yeah,
for across the
crosswalk,
street?
right.
Across the
And it really doesn't make any difference to me. As I mentioned in here, the only addition would be determining how much handrail we'd need to keep people from stepping off and going into the creek, if it's on the west side. And we can certainly get that information together. This was just the concept to have the sidewalk. Whether it's on the east or west side is of no consequence to me.
Yeah, I just think it would be better on the west side than the east side. So I'm sure.
I agree. Again, it was just the extra cost of the handrail.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we can easily determine that and have a number for it. And I actually allowed some in here for handrail because there's a little culvert there we'll have to go over, and there'll need to be some handrail in there. But there won't be near the handrail on the east side as there will be required on the west side, in my opinion, from what I saw.
Yeah. Okay, well, can we approve this, but not say the east side, or just say looking at both sides and then coming back for,
Yeah, we have plenty of time. So the whole idea was just to approve the project, and then we'll actually go out there and determine handrail if you want to look at the west side as well.
because the way it's written, if we approve it, it's all going to be on the east side,
Well,
as
we
it's
can-
written.
We can amend that and just say, we'll look at it to see what's best, which side, depending on the cost of the handrail, or however you want to do it. That'll be up to
Well,
Bert.
like I said, I also think it's a safety issue, so,
Sure.
it's
No,
not just the cost.
I considered all that when I wrote this.
Anyway, yeah, that's my thought.
Alex?
I'm completely in favor of sidewalks. I think they're a clear safety measure. I know Councilmember Baez put that provision. I was going to mention that about it coming back before final. And hopefully this is the kind of topic that can also go before EDC. And then if their initial thought is that they're going to pay for it, then they can talk about one side versus the other and see the costs, et cetera. And then if they choose not to go forward, then I think it's pretty much unanimous. We're all going to say yes. It's just I want to be able to see the numbers before it finally gets into approval. Otherwise, I'm completely and thoroughly in favor. And I sure hope that this kind of resolves some of the issue with all of the people who park along the area that it says no parking right outside in front of this little building. And maybe if there's a sidewalk, I don't know, they might just park on the sidewalk, but hopefully not. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I mentioned in here, if these are approved, they'll go to the EDC board this next week, is my intention. Bert, any follow-up?
Yeah, something just popped in my head. When is SAWS doing their work on rigs? And are they going to be using I guess you'd call it the west side to do that project?
We're not sure yet. and I
But
don't
are they
know
going to
that.
use because I think it's going to be on the west side, isn't it?
Were they talking about coming down in the street or in the right-of-way? Rick, do you recall?
I don't recall at this point.
That's something we probably should look into, because if we don't want to put it there, then they just tear it right back up.
Well, they would work around it, and whatever they would tear up, they have to fix. That's just the way it is,
The whole sidewalk? Okay.
whatever.
But I would check into that just to see when, if they're gonna, where they're gonna put that line that they're gonna put in down Riggs Road. And put that into the equation too.
Yeah,
What kind of line? A water line?
okay. Pardon me?
A water line?
They're upgrading the sewer system.
Yeah, they're eliminating the lift station out by San Antonio Ranch and putting in some new lines.
Oh, I
But we're not sure when or exactly where. And like I say, I'm not sure they're aware of that either. Okay, Paul, any follow-up?
I don't believe so. Thank you.
Jim?
This is my first, not my follow-up, but that's all right. That's,
You haven't spoken yet?
no,
I left you out?
you left me out.
Well, that could actually be a good thing.
It could be.
It could be.
The,
Go
I'm
for
in
it.
favor of the plan, I'm in favor of the sidewalk. I would recommend to the people that made the motion in the second, that we call it a conceptual approval, that the location can be determined later on the east side, west side. My one thing would be wherever the cross is going to happen, it'd be well short of that curve and not be right at the curve. So I'd like to see the location of that when it comes up.
Yeah, that's what I put in there. It'd be at least 50 feet from the intersection. And there'll be a crosswalk either way, because there will be people that want to go from the west side to the east side to go up the hill, I'm sure. So there'll be people crossing at some point, whether we have a crosswalk or not.
And my follow-up is I'm in favor.
Okay, so you are? Okay. So we killed two fowl with one rock. Have you done anything follow-up? I've lost control here.
I know. I like what he said. That's
Okay.
We'll go with that.
It's nice that somebody liked what he said. Anybody else? I think we've covered it. Okay, so a yes vote will be to approve going forward. Did you want to do your amendment?
Yes.
Okay, do your formal amendment.
Which one, both of them?
Yeah,
Okay, the amended part is if the EDC does not approve the funding, that it come back to city council for that.
okay,
And then the other was the one that Councilmember Massey and Meadows said about the contingent on what side.
which side? And we'll bring those numbers back when we do the
That pretty much covered all?
calculations.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Selena, did you get that? Okay, so the motion has been amended to where if the EDC denies funding this project, that once we have the cost determined, it will come back to council for approval on the funding out of the 2015 certificates of obligation. And the second was that the location, which side the sidewalk is on, will be determined at a later date by council. So that's right, Selena? That's the way you read it? Okay. Again, a yes vote will be to approve it, a no vote will be to deny it. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. I appreciate it, and we will proceed with this and have it ready for you guys at a later date. Okay, and now the most exciting part is budget. So, Rick, did you want to get up there? You're good? Okay, you should have the numbers. There were no dramatic changes to the numbers, so everything is pretty much the same as before. So if you have specific questions about a specific line item, Rick can address that. As Rick mentioned to you in the email when he sent those sheets to you, that tonight we would like to reach a consensus in the form of direction on the two items that we've had the most discussion on, and that is whether you will agree to reduce the property tax rate from 35 cents per $100 valuation to 34.5 cents per $100 valuation. So that's one direction we'd like to have. The second is whether or not to increase the mandatory contribution for employees to the Texas Municipal Retirement System from the current 6% to a 7%. At the same time, that would increase the city's 2-to-1 match. And again, that would be good to do the consensus direction so that Rick can realign the numbers, because if you recall, the budget as it was presented and as it is today has taken into effect the 0.5% reduction. So staying with 35 cents will mean our revenues will be higher than we're projecting on this budget, so we can change that number. And the other pertaining to the retirement system is that if that's increased, he'll have to go back and adjust all of the line items for each department for retirement contributions. And we'd like to have all of that done and in the budget when it's approved, so that we don't have to do budget adjustments later. That pretty well cover it, Rick? Okay. So if nothing else, we'd like to have a consensus on those two items tonight. So are there questions or comments on anything other than those two from anybody? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and attack these. Let's do property tax first. Jim, we'll start with you. Since we left you out on the other one, we'll make you first on
I
this one.
appreciate that, sir. My reluctance to reduce the rate at the first meeting was to wait until we got to this point where we actually have a budget. We see that the final numbers kicked in. I'm in favor of the reduction of the rate, and I'd like to, that's my position. I don't really have any additional need for information on that, but that's.
Not really. Okay. Alex?
I'm in favor of leaving the rate at the 35 cents.
Okay. Bert?
I'm in favor of leaving the rate at where it is right now.
Paul?
I'd like to keep it at the 35 cents.
Okay. Cynthia?
I'd like to reduce it to the 34.5.
Okay. Well, that's 3-2. So we'll go ahead and assume the vote will go that way, and let's change your numbers accordingly. Okay, next is the 6 to 7% contribution to TMRS. Jim, we'll start with you again.
You're going to pick on me first again, okay?
Yeah.
We went over this last time, and I realize that I have a bit of a prejudice on it, that I think it is of value to demonstrate to our employees that we're looking out for their long-term benefits, along with the fact that if we're actually have a surplus right now, I would be in favor of the 7% versus the 6%.
Okay. Cynthia?
As I was before, I'm still very much against it. I'm a little confounded that you guys don't want to lower the tax rate for our citizens. But I'm even more confounded that you want to put this continual unfunded liability to the city, this increased cost. It's going to go up 7%. It's going to add $28,000 annually to the budget to cover the increased cost, and then it's going to increase the city's unfunded liabilities to $85,000 annually. And this does not take into account all of the new hires over the next few years. This is something that's perpetual. It's once you give someone, a perk, you never can take it back, pretty much. You can lower the tax rate, you can you can get a higher tax rate, but once you do this is it. This is pretty much it, and the city is stuck. You are not willing to give the citizens, their $18 back. I asked Rick how many households we had. We have 4,107 individual tax-paying property owners, and 3,000 are single-family residences. The return to them of their tax dollars would have been about $74,000 total for the city. And I didn't understand why we should not want to do that, give them back, give $74,000, considering that we can still maintain our level of services. And I was a little upset about the fact that people were thinking that this was a political move. No, I think that it's a fiscal responsibility. But I find it troubling that the council would prefer to add an expense of $112,000 annually to our budget in perpetuity for the misguided belief that adding to the city's employee retirement fund is going to get us better employees or allow us to keep the good employees we already have, because it's not going to do that. Maybe it'll make you feel better, giving taxpayer money to our employees. We already give them quite a bit. But all it's going to do is increase the city's liabilities and expenses in perpetuity. And as I mentioned before, I was elected to represent the citizens of Helotes. I am not a labor union boss advocating for employees. And I believe that the budget presented with a lower tax rate for our citizens and an employee salary increase of 5%, which is what was in the mayor's budget, is best for our city, for our citizens and our employees. So I'm against adding this 1% that we have to match. I'm just very much against it, and I think it's wrong fiscally for our city.
Okay. Alex?
I'm in favor of going to the 7%.
Paul?
I've struggled with this one quite a bit, but in looking at some of the issues that the city has had with recruitment and retention, specifically in the fire department, I think that we need to add to our recruitment and retention toolbox, and I think this will help retain our good employees and help us recruit good employees. Certainly the economy is booming. We have very low unemployment. It's probably a struggle for a lot of employers to get quality people, and I think this would greatly benefit those retention and recruitment. And looking at the list of employees, we've got, I think, like 80 or 90% of our people with the city that have been here 15 years or less. So this is going to greatly benefit the vast majority of our employees in the long term. Yes, it's a cost to the city, but I think it will greatly benefit all the employees, so I'm in favor of it.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm just curious, when you say issues, we have issues and we have retention problems and recruitment problems. Do you have any specific information there? Because I'm not really aware that any of those are specific problems.
Well, a conversation with the chief, and then in our consent agenda, we're moving quite a bit of money to the fire department for overtime because they couldn't staff properly. That was from not being able to have enough people.
That was an unusual situation that happened short term, yeah, but it's not a long-going or a repetitive
It's fixed.
situation. It's stable now.
Okay.
I'm in
you're-
favor of the increase to 7%.
Okay. And so the direction then is, you were for it?
Yes.
And so all of you are for it, and Cynthia's not. Okay, so that gives us the direction there. I would like to point out that this is not an automatic lock. This just helps us get the numbers together. So you will have another opportunity when you actually take the vote to approve the budget next time.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Clearly, the tax rate is going to be on our next agenda.
Yes.
However, the budget does not dictate the other action, so I assume that there would need to be a follow-up agenda item to address the TMRS issue, separate than the budget discussion, is that correct?
We'll look at that. It might be.
Because that's a policy decision,
yeah,
and the payroll
we
decision is not a
probably
budget
will.
question
You have to
only.
adopt an ordinance.
Right, that's
that
what,
would increase
that's what I was
from
getting
6
at. I didn't
Well,
know what the
that'll
timing
come-
of that, if it goes to that end, what the timing of that motion and
We could be
agenda item
sure
has to
that
be.
as part of the budget, is included, that we're going with the 7%, and then at some point between, we'll want to do it as soon as we can, the ordinance approving that. It doesn't have to be done till the end of the year, because that's, TMRS works on a calendar year, but we want to get it done as soon as we can. So, yeah, we'll take care of that on the 26th. And as far as the property tax rate, the budget has to be approved before you can act on the tax rate. So once the budget's approved, there'll be a separate action item for the tax rate, okay? So any other discussion on the budget?
Nope.
Okay, that being said, if there is no objection, we will adjourn. No objection? We're adjourned, and the time is 8:10.